Energy burden is the proportion of a household's income that goes to pay for their utilities. Energy burden in Indianapolis is all over the place. There are particularly high energy burdens in Indianapolis because we know that the cost of living is so low, but also incomes are particularly low. And then we know that Indianapolis has a high eviction rate, and we can see from some of those economic models that energy burden is an important factor in some of those.
So Indianapolis is actually, Indiana in general, has one of the highest energy burdens in the Midwest. At a national level, it's about 3% of their monthly income goes toward their energy bills. In Indiana, that is double. It's almost 6%. And you narrow it down to even lower incomes, they can spend even much more, about 10 to 12% of their monthly income on their energy bills.
Energy burden is both a metric and an idea. As an idea, it's how much does it cost us to use energy, right, relative to our overall income. As a metric, it's a simple measurement. It's how much of our income do we spend on household energy use.
Well, it affects everything, like your housing, how much food you can put on the table, the roof you keep over your head. Because if you're spending 10 to 12% of your income on paying your utility bills, that's 10 to 12% that you don't have to set aside. The money that you can't save for a rainy day. So it really does impact everything.
I don't think energy burden is talked about very much because it's either a concept that's misunderstood or it's fairly new in understanding the economic value of it, in that proportion is either particularly low and so it's not a consideration, or that proportion is particularly high and so it is a concern to those who would experience high energy burden. I think there's a potential that those that are speaking about those type of economic models are not experiencing high energy burden, and so the light is not being shined on that. Even some of the data behind it wasn't necessarily readily available at a systems-wide level until the last 5 or so years.
I think it's in part because everybody pays utilities, right? I think there's an implicit assumption that those costs are the same for everybody. But in fact, how much energy you use, it really differs depending on how big your home is, how efficient your structure is, how efficient your appliances are, right? For people who don't have really efficient heating systems or air conditioning systems, that raises their cost of energy. If you live in a dwelling that has drafty windows or drafty doors, that increases your energy.
Energy democracy is about taking the control from the corporations, from the utilities, and putting it in the hands of communities, putting it in the hands of people, and having a more democratic government over who controls the energy production, what sources are we using for our energy production, because whoever controls those means, again, controls how much we're paying at the end of the day for our utility bills.
Beyond that, there are other dimensions of energy democracy. It's giving people control over their own energy production. Rooftop solar is a great example of this, right? When a person is able to put solar on top of their roofs, they're generating their own electricity. That requires them to rely less heavily on the private utility, which they're otherwise getting their energy from. It transforms the experience of having energy in the home. It makes people more responsible, more aware, and more careful about the energy that they're utilizing.
So the Office of Sustainability and Solar United Neighbors were able to secure some funding to create this micropilot. The residents that were able to take advantage of it, the constituents that are able to take advantage of it, saw Kheprw Institute or saw SUN or saw INHP as the face or as the door to enter this program, and then they were able to take advantage of an interest form, express their interest in the program, and then start the paperwork to assess their residence, to assess their home, and determine whether it would be a good fit for the program. So the 10 residents that were able to take advantage and be a part of the micropilot that we did in 2020, 2021 were a test. They were a great example of what can be done in Central Indiana, and the program was used to attract millions of dollars that's going to come to Indianapolis to help hundreds of residents in Indianapolis, and not just those 10.
So basically, when you get a solar system, and if you are a homeowner, so the panels are installed on top of your roof, or maybe they're on the ground, Depends on how much land you have. And all of that sun is taken in by those panels and converted into energy, and that goes through your power lines. It's going to power your entire home during the day. If you have a battery storage, you can set aside some of that energy produced during the day and power your home even in the evenings or during an energy shortage. So you're taking the sun and you're turning it into power, and that means that you're not taking power from the grid. You're not using the utilities power, and every time you're not using the utility power, that meter's not running forward, so they can't charge you.
There's no reason why only higher income people should enjoy the benefits of solar power. The challenges are that lower income folks tend to have less money to put forward initially for the investments. They often are renters or don't own their homes, which makes it difficult to put solar panels onto a roof that they don't control. Here's where policy makes a real difference. We can create mechanisms by which lower income households can have more access to technologies like solar power.
That would be Black and brown households, Hispanic, Black families, families with young children, and even families where you have to have medical equipment that's constantly on. All of these families are the most impacted by the energy burdens because they have higher energy needs. They probably live in energy efficiency homes or apartments, so they end up spending more money.
History plays a really important role in understanding patterns around energy burden, energy insecurity. We know that housing stock in previously redlined or segregated areas is just not as high quality, right? There's been less historical investment, less ability for people to make investments in their own homes. And this increases energy burden because it means those homes are less energy efficient. And this is a really important component of thinking about the future of addressing energy burdens, is remembering that we need to look to the past to get a full explanation of why we are in the situation that we're in right now. What this means then for the long term is investing in those communities that have been historically discriminated against, and understanding that energy burden as we see it today is in part a consequence of decisions that our government and others made long ago, and we have a responsibility for making those right.
It can make a big difference. Again, the program that I first worked on, the families were saving 50% off their energy bills when they went solar. And a lot of families told us, they finally were able to start saving for a rainy day. Families with young kids were able to set aside money for their kids to go to college. They were able to make renovations and repairs to their homes, especially the seniors, where they were living on a fixed income, and having that extra 50% in savings meant, they can spruce up the home, they can put in new windows, and even conserve more energy and have more savings on their bills.
What I'd like to see is that we really embed energy affordability, technological accessibility at the outset of these policies, so that everybody has an opportunity to be part of this clean energy transition.